So yeah, hello everybody. So SUSE QE Tools Workshop. Thank you for joining. Happy to see you here. Topic for today will be about an openQA feature, retry of jobs based on test variables. So that's a specific feature that we have implemented lately. But in general, that could be a start of a discussion about retrying or retriggering jobs in general. So I really like to hear your experiences. We can share new ideas or practices, how you work with this in the existing system, also compare it to other systems, like, hey, I don't know, in GitLab, I do it like this, and yeah, in openQA, I do it like that. So we can share all that and see what would be the best fitting approach for each scenario. So the specific openQA feature here is retrying of individual jobs based on test variables. So we had one ticket, which is 104007. And this is when we wanted to implement that. And the acceptance criteria which we want to have solved here is that openQA jobs are automatically retriggered with a maximum amount specified in test variables. But by default, openQA tests apply no automatic retry. So that shouldn't change. We defined some acceptance tests, and basically, well, this is the pull request where we did that. And in the documentation, if we're just going to look for retry, then you will find this section about automatic retries of jobs, and it tells you that you can set a test variable retry in the format of the number of retries and an optional description. That's an integer value. And in that description, which is optional, you can describe something like why you want that. That could be like free text string, or it could be something like here, bug number 42. So, you know, that everybody reading that knows why you want to have a retry. And the number of retry means that if the job fails and there's retry 2, meaning that it's retriggered once, and if it still fails or if it again fails, then it will be retried another time. If that still fails, then it will abort. And what I consider important for something like this, for retry features, normally like what's the time, like the back off time between two succeeding runs. But on the context of openQA, we have system level tests, so normally it takes a bit of time, like some seconds, at least 4 minutes, until a new job will be scheduled and will be picked up by a free worker, and only then will be worked on. So this is why so far we haven't implemented something like a configurable time between each, but this is like, you know, as soon as a worker is available, retry is happening. So what do you think about this feature? Have you used it already? Do you think it's applicable? Do you know better alternatives? So 1 + 1, that's nice. Or thumbs up, rather. Where can we put the test variable? Well, that's the same as for any other openQA test variable. What can be done is that this retry variable could be put on all the different places where we have settings. So let me give you an example. For example, in medium types, maybe not really that applicable, but you know, if they're like you say, whenever we use Windows medium, we set DVD in Windows. So yeah, we could also put something like retry 3, just because. And then whenever that medium is involved, then up to 3 additional retries would be done. So up to 4 jobs would be tried whenever a job fails. Of course, it could be done in machines, and maybe that makes more sense to say there's certain machine setting where it's more flaky, like whenever you test something with chemo on 32-bit, then for whatever reason, there might be a reason why there's something flaky and you want to give it another chance. There could be test suits where you say there's a certain test suit which is more flaky. And of course, there can be the job templates themselves. So if you take a look here and we find a certain combination of a test suit with a machine and a certain setting, we could say like, yeah, okay, apply retry here, like, here, retry 3, like this, right? Or, and you can do that in the to say in the worker setting. So if there's a specific workers which seems to be more problematic, then you can also put that into the worker settings, and then they will propagate. Yeah. Yeah, Jose, so you said that network issues could be a good reason where to use the retry. I second that. And also for network, commonly the question is like, how long does it take until a certain problem is fixed or reappears? And in many cases, probably a better alternative would be to have retry within the job. Like if you have a test module and it tries to access the network, then you retry within. But of course, that can take some time to change and implement, and also maybe it's not enough waiting time within the test. So yeah, who wanted to say something? So Richard first, please.
Yeah, thanks. Although I have one question about the retry. When we try to
Sorry, you're a bit low volume. Could you try to ramp up your volume?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Can't understand you.
Hear me now? No?
Let's try. It's still bad. Let's see. Go on.
Okay, I speak louder. I have one quick question about the retry level. When we try to retry a field job, how about its priority? As we know, if we retry a job, it will occupy some hardware resource, and it will impact other tests if we retry many times here.
Correct. So the retry feature, it just does the very same as if you would click that restart job icon, which is again the same as in here. So that means you create a direct clone, okay? So it's a direct replacement for that, meaning that also it will be scheduled again with the same priority.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Right. So you're right that of course one needs to be careful to not put like retry 100 everywhere, and then suddenly you don't realize that all the jobs are always retried and it takes like 100 times longer until stuff is getting. Next hand raised was by Phoenix. Phoenix, go ahead.
Yes, hello. I really like this feature. What would be a nice addition for the future, but really just a nice addition, is to have some backup or back off time defined, because especially looking at infrastructure or network issues, most of the times it does not make sense to restart the same job immediately afterwards. And it would be nice if there would be something like a retry delay setting, where you can say it doesn't make any sense to run this job in the next 30 minutes. But as I said, it's a low priority. Would be nice to have feature.
Right. That's like, I consider that's like the perfect direct successor feature request to say like, okay, we have retry and now we want to have a back off time. I'm thinking of exponential back off, right? Where maybe you can define the factor and the time, and then you say try again after 1 minute. If that still fails, try again after 2 minutes if that still fails after 4, or you can say start again only after 10 minutes and then after 20 and then after 40. Okay, yeah, thanks. Good. I noted that down. Thank you. Jose?
Hi. That's very nice feature. I really like it. It would solve the problem that we have sometimes with this, I don't know, SUSE Connect stuff and things like this, where we cannot just put retry in the code everywhere, right? But yeah, I was wondering about openQA review script working together with this, because I guess if we say retry 2 or retry 3 or whatever, it doesn't make sense to run openQA review script here, right?
Do you mean openQA review that's doing this overall report, or do you mean auto review that is
Auto
looking?
review, sorry.
Right. So, right. So, what auto review? Well, auto review is triggered whenever a job is failing and there is not already a comment on the job. Okay. So let's say something new that didn't happen in before, in a scenario where everything is green, and then suddenly today a job fails, then auto review is triggered. I would say it can make very much sense, because let's say there is a certain instability in the test. We don't know yet what the reason is. And we have a progress ticket that's matching on the according error expression. Yeah. Then auto review would catch that. Now, if you have retry configured on top, the job will be retried by openQA automatically. And then actually the additional auto review option to have the job retry will not have an effect, because that signal would come later. It sees the job is already retried, so nothing happens. But the benefit of still using auto review here is that, well, on one hand, during retry, with retry, you likely end up with a green job, right? That's what you want for that sporadic issue. On the other hand, with the ticket that is referenced by auto review, you still have a reference of, well, it actually did fail in between, okay? And you can still think about how to stabilize the test so that it doesn't happen. Now, you might want to come to the point where you say, like, it's actually nothing that we really want to handle, like network issue, and you just want that openQA feature to handle that and never care that there was an actually retry. But I think these are really special cases. The normal case should be that you say, sometimes sporadic issues can happen. You want to end up with a green job, but you still want to, for the long-term planning and enhancement, to know that there was a retry and you handle that in a ticket. Make sense?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I was actually worried about if we start using retry, and then also we have the auto review, we can spam openQA with a lot of jobs in the queue if people start using this, and plus the auto review thing. But yeah, I guess
Yes.
there was a comment in the chat which is actually very much in what direction I am saying, so that we could probably limit the range. So Joachim, I leave it to you, maybe, if you want.
Hello. Yeah. I guess it. Yeah, I was wondering the same. Like if accidentally someone clones something, it will collapse all the infrastructure by this retry. So maybe a range will be interesting. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. It reminds me, like, if you make an eBay bid and you confuse the comma and the dot, and you say, like, instead of 30 euros, you make it 3,000 euros. And I think normally eBay is also catching that, so it's actually not. It's saying, like, this was an unreasonable high amount and likely you made a mistake. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, what we already have in place for other cases where we have some kind of pattern which we matched, and we only accept a certain value if it matches the pattern. So we could, by that, limit the retries to say, on our instance, we don't allow more than a single digit retry, right? So 9 would be the highest number. that would be possible. I would say there are many different cases where something can go wrong, and there needs to be some kind of monitoring anyway. Like, you know, it could be that you just end up scheduling broken jobs all the time, maybe by some external trigger script. We had these cases, but in all of these cases, I would say it wasn't that critical because sooner or later it was detected and then remedied. Okay, so one question that you, Joaquin, also put stated, like, would that put all the jobs in queue for same architecture and machine? Yes. So the same as if you would trigger that button, it's cloning all the settings, and that means that also it will look for architecture and machine, or actually what it will come to is the same worker class. And depending on what is there, it will either spread it out to multiple different machines, but not in parallel, but, you know, one after another. Or, well, if your worker class is restricted so that it only matches a single machine, then only that single machine. And then there was the point about, I was always skeptical about this particular tool. The reason is that it consumes resources and usually team rather to rerun the test. Anyway, in my opinion, tools team should have smoke tests and a service to validate expected conditions and report the status instead of triggering retry directly. So yes, there are different approaches to retry. I would say so far it's okay to use this way because I know of many other different ways how you could, by mistake or by malicious intent, you could try to break the system, and we have different measures in place to prevent that. Or on the other hand, that it's not that critical because you have many different workers that can run certain jobs, and we haven't seen such a bad impact of that, you know, we see it as being abused. But on the other hand, that is also the reason why we were careful when implementing that and didn't have that for such a long time. Because as I said also in the beginning, you could put retry 100 on a generic setting, which like all the media, and then all the jobs run with that. Okay, but yeah, let's see when this happens. So far, there have been nice and careful people using our system, so not that big of a problem yet. Okay, someone else? Could the retry take a look at the duration of the job? Then it would be less harmful in those cases. Yeah, that's a good idea. I see the one big challenge that I see with that is that the runtime very much depends on if a job is passing or not. You know, because most often tests fail because of some kind of timeout, plus there's post-fail hook. So it can be that normally a job takes like yeah, okay, this is like the inverse example. So this is the inverse example. You can see normally it takes like 50 minutes, and then it's failing, and it's failing within the first 5 minutes. So for such case, maybe it wouldn't be fair to say we don't retry the job that often, because it would normally run 3/4 of an hour when it's actually failing after just 5 minutes. There are also the inverse examples where you say normally a job takes like half an hour. And in the case of failures, consider multiple test modules failing and each calling the post-fail hook and each trying to gather the logs. It could also be the case where, despite the job not taking that long, in the case of failure, it would actually take very long. And of course, that would be more severe with multiple retries. So good idea, but honestly, I wouldn't know how to fairly implement that.
Just to add something, that like for cases like when you have 4 hours of job, it's where probably doesn't make sense. No, I don't try to not try to tune. I know that maybe the post fail hooks are not really well tuned, and then it takes more. But in some cases, we are talking about hours. So if someone put 5 retries of something that failing take 4 hours, yeah, it will not be available the worker for anyone.
The question that I'm asking myself is, what's the alternative? I mean, what are users doing? And honestly, I mean, we can see that this job was restarted already 6 times, and I'm very sure that it was restarted 6 times by a user, unless there's a retry in here and I missed it. But nope, it's just a random example I selected. So I think what happens here is that actually, like humans manually click the retry button, and I think a better option to humans investing their precious lifetime is that we have the automation to do the same, and that's like the happy case where people benefit from that, because I don't think retrying manually is a good idea. Okay, so I also don't think that this openQA feature should actually be used much, but instead of doing it manually, doing it automatically, I think in many cases is a little bit less worse. Yanis?
I just want to say that in a philosophical maybe level, that this thing overlaps with the approach that some of us do with using trying to solve some network issues, for example, with script retry. So I think we can do more better than this and be more clever. So pretty much you have on the test script retry, it fails, then you retrigger the test, it fails, and I don't see actually good reason for this, but
very good, thank you. So let's talk about better alternatives. Because as I said, I think on the scale between this is how it should work out ideally, and this is like the worst. With this feature, we are near the worst. So Chris stated in chat, the concern applies to both cases about the invested resources. If a human retries a lot, we waste resources. It's the same. Yeah, I agree. In both cases, we waste computer resources. With automation, we at least save some human resource for, if you come to that job early in the morning and you see like, okay, it was already restarted 5 times by openQA, there's no point in me needing to click the retry button and wait for the result, because maybe it will pass. It's very likely that it will not pass. We know that already. We can save that time. Felix?
My 2 cents on this one is that I see this as a complementary tool to address all of the issues that cannot be solved by script retry. I'm particularly talking about certain test cases on certain infrastructure where network issues can happen in all test cases, because for some random reasons you can lose the connectivity to the system under test.
Right.
And in those cases, it doesn't make any sense to add script retry on every single case, but such a tool is very useful in those cases. However, it is also important to mention here that this retry is really just a feature for those corner cases and should be not inflationary used just to save some human work in order to add script retry where that actually is more applicable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I guess you know the same as me that it will be abused. we can't prevent that. I'm sure. But let me show you other examples, like for example, in GitHub Action, right? So people are looking for solutions like this one, where you have different steps and you try to rerun a step. There are GitHub Actions on the marketplace, which you can use to retry and GitHub Action. I know that in Travis CI retry, I think there's actually, whenever you have Travis CI test, there is a Travis retry script always available in that environment. So what you can do is, if your test call is maybe make test, you can just write Travis retry make test, and then it would retry up to 3 times. We also have other cases like the openQA test itself. We use Circle CI. And with Circle CI, there are options to use retry, and or actually I can also show you many different cases how we do retry. So for example, we have a different make file, and you can see the very first variable is called retry. By default, of course, we don't apply retry, but there are cases where, for example, for certain test cases, you can see here the so-called full stack test. Currently, I mean, this is not always the case. Currently, we apply up to 15 retries because it failed sometime. Now, will this stay forever? Well, we have currently a ticket in our backlog to work on that. So whenever we put the retry there, we say like, okay, part of the team can go on, caring about whatever feature or bug fix you're working on. Don't be concerned with the full stack failing, because it will be covered by retry, the sporadic failure. And the other part of the team is actively working on resolving that instability. So we have a ticket in our backlog that says the goal must be that we don't apply retry for this test. Yeah? And about Circle CI, actually, we have a problem which I consider quite annoying. Let's see, do we have any mention of retry in there? No, we don't, because it's not possible. And the problem is, the initial phase of Circle CI is also like downloading some container, calling zipper in an OpenSUSE image, and trying to get access to the network. And well, sometimes that fails because network. That's and the problem is, at this step, we cannot retry because we are not yet in the stage of calling a script where we could do like a simple bash loop. But it's the setup phase, and there's no configuration option that I'm aware of for Circle CI where I can say like, when the setup phase, like the initial network downloading fails, retry. So we tried multiple workarounds and tried to keep the image in a way. What we actually did is we have a container image, and normally you would merge the layers of the container together. But we learned that keeping the layers separately makes the image much larger to download, but less likely to fail because the individual layers are still smaller than the overall image. It's less likely to fail due to download. It sounds crazy, but no. So sometimes you have to do that. And thanks, Grit. So yeah, there's in GitLab, there's retry. The funny thing is that in GitLab, it's really limited. You can have it 0, 1, or 2. So you can have retry 2, which means up to 3 tries, but not more. So yeah. Other cases, alternatives, better solutions, suggestions. Alice, go on.
Okay, I haven't thought through this thoroughly, but what if you have algorithmically cast the last command, and if this fails, then on post fail hook retry this, and in case that fails, just stop the test, not retry nothing, and just go to investigate. For example, because it, I don't know, some directory, for example, doesn't exist, or some file that you try to access. Yeah, but if it fails also because of network, you have to wait and don't retry just uh, straight away. Did you get the idea, or?
Yeah, you're right that if network fails, there will be a point where it makes sense to retry. And I think in many cases that's better solved within openQA test. Like there's one example which Jose mentioned is script retry, which is a wrapper function in OS Audience Distri OpenSUSE, the main OpenSUSE and the openQA test distribution.
The idea is to cast the last command that runs.
I guess that the problem is what failure to expect. This openQA retry is really high level. So this is really meant for you don't know where that would fail. And of course, on that level, openQA doesn't remember which command exactly it would fail. So it could be that you configure 7 retries and it would fail in all different steps. So it could fail in one single, like the very same step. In all these cases, I would say a much better option is to handle the retry within the test distribution. Like use Perl, use Bash. I will come to you guys in a second. And retry in there, because there you have much more control over what you actually intend to do, how long you want to wait between the retries and all this. Okay, let's first hear Pavel.
Yeah, I have a bit different question. I heard that some people were speaking about the script retry, and I fortunately remember the time when this was like in cast and it was ported to utils. But I wonder what was using before script retry, because like for example in case of SCC there is so much of failures in SCC. So, like, without script retry, the test will be 10 times more red. And yeah, maybe a bit philosophical question, but why we are implementing retry now and it was not here before?
The script retry?
Yeah, the script retry.
The script retry, it's not 1 year old, it's more than 3 years old, and it was implemented for not like a fallback mechanism of, it was specifically for that cases for that something's gonna have some delays, so you need to wait for this.
Yeah, but there were always those delays. So what people used before, because it's like quite essential.
What has been used in before is custom retry loops where it makes sense and depending on the specific cases. The really big problem I see with script retry is Janis explained where it should be applied and where it should be used. But again, is I think Phoenix, as you said, don't abuse it. And people will not necessarily know what's the intended purpose. So it will sooner or later, it will be used for the wrong use case where you hammer the key, you hammer the keyboard because something doesn't work as expected, and after the 7th retry it will work. So you put in a script retry, and in the end, if you would have looked deeper, then the problem is like a real bug in the system which you didn't catch.
Yeah, but for example, in the containers, the STC works very horribly. And it's known for years. There were discussions about this because the container needs to get some volume from the host and it needs to ask SEC, and the SEC is printing some list which is not paginating. So the SEC takes maybe minutes for it, and sometimes it's yeah. And if I look at some subroutines, well, there is not assert script run anymore. It's just script retry after retry.
Yes.
And I don't shoot to my own rows, but yeah, some problems they are just not getting fixed, and that is the result.
Michael?
Yes, just want to give my view as a reviewer. Well, this week was a special week, let's say, but in general, I think this feature is very useful, but I would go another step and say it should be default retry 1. Then we can limit to 5 to 3 retries, and that's still fine, because if you need to retry 10 times, maybe it's worth to have a look of what's happening. But since we are trying to address here issues that may happen and then not happen again anymore, if it happens once and I change the test to set a retry once, and then this will never happen for the next 2 years, it will take 10 years until I set retry 1 to every single test and then catch it again. So I would like to see a retry at least one everywhere, and then on special cases we can say 2, 3, 4, whatever, because I spend like half an hour in the morning during the review by just looking at the list of failed stuff, and if it's more than 5 failures, I will just pick one to look at and the other will restart in the meantime, because just it makes sense, which it's more efficient. And if it's a failure which never happened before and a strange thing might be network, I don't even look at it, because I retry and look at something else. So
Right.
yeah.
So I understand that you suggest a general default should be one retry for any failure.
Yes,
Right?
otherwise it wouldn't help with special one-time failures, which
Sure.
is not worth to look at.
So I have some special opinion, or actually an alternative about that, but let's first hear other opinions. So what do you guys think? Should we do retry one as a default everywhere? What's it?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I wouldn't actually do a default. I would do it default, but based on some premises. Meaning, if you have a failing job that is failing for the last 3 days, and you know it's gonna fail today because yeah, you're just waiting for the fix, and you don't want to schedule it and
Right.
take the hassle. So it's just waiting for a fix that you are sure that it will be fixed tomorrow or in 2 days or whatever. So if we make a default, it's a waste of yeah, resources, because that you know it's gonna fail, but you
Yes.
still are making it default to fail. So I would do default retry only if the previous, I don't know, 3 jobs or 3 runs um, are not failing. So if all of them are failing, it doesn't make sense to retry. So making it a bit smarter, something like this. Of course, that's yet another putting more complexity to a simple feature. But yeah, I mean, this is just an answer to what I think about making it default.
Yeah.
Making
Right.
it default, but with some conditions.
Yes. Right. So there, I think the critical point is you said if jobs in the same scenario in before, right?
Right.
So the retry, same as the manual retrigger, would be like the very same scenario, but also the same build where we retrigger, right? And I guess what you mean is like if it also failed in the previous 5 builds because the bug was reported and it's just not yet fixed, right?
Yeah. So it's basically what Michael is saying. So he looks at the history, and if there is some serious problem, then he doesn't retry because,
Yep.
yeah, we know there's a
So
failure. But if it's something sporadic, just he triggers retry.
yes,
So
as Michael just said in chat, there's a ticket reference attached to it.
okay,
Do not
right,
retry.
yes,
And basically that's what we do with the openQA investigation jobs.
yeah,
So the openQA investigation jobs, they are only triggered if there's not already a comment there. There could be a comment because there's label carryover from a ticket reference, like because it all, just a case that you mentioned, you know, a bug was detected, bug was reported, it's not fixed yet, new builds come in the meantime, so you have label carryover. And then the other alternative could be auto review. So not in the same scenario, but somewhere else, the same problem as defined by regex was already found. Here we find it as well. So this is where we put the label there automatically. And only if both of these cases don't happen, and only for failures and incomplete, only for failures, then we would trigger openQA investigation jobs, which include a retry. The only difference is that it will not overwrite the original result. Why? Well, for the same reason as I think that retry one as default is bad, because effectively that would double the time it would take to detect new issues. Imagine the following: you have 100 tests, and out of this 100 tests, there are like 2 tests that fail now in a new build. Maybe one of these failures is a sporadic network issue where in hindsight you would say, yeah, it's actually not a problem that you would like to fix, so it's okay, right? And the alternative is, the second job would be a new bug, but you won't see the test failing because it will be automatically retried. It takes another 2 hours or another 4 hours to show you that it's reproducible. So you would only see that after 8 hours, right? And this is why we chose with the openQA investigate jobs to not alter the original result and not override it with a new job, but have something in parallel. Like, I mean, some experts of you say, I don't need the openQA investigate jobs because I'm faster. And you're right. I mean, that's perfect. You see the failing job. In parallel, the investigation jobs have been triggered. Maybe they had a chance to run. Maybe they're still scheduled and waiting for a free slot. In the meantime, you see that failure and you say like, yeah, I know that. It's a clear bug or it's a sporadic issue. And then you handle it accordingly. It could be that you handle that by clicking the retry button again. That's where we would like to help you with all the different kind of retry features. It could be that you say the result is acceptable as is. You can use force result, put a label there, or you can keep it as is, keep it as failed, and just put the bug label there for a critical issue. Michael?
Yeah, so I agree that in an ideal situation, you spend more time because you wait the second, the one more retry if you put that as default before catching an issue. But in that case, I would say, well, we can then disable that when we are in a better situation when only a few things fail. But right now, I think it's still helpful because when too many things fail, you still manually retry stuff. And
Right.
if I manually restart something at 8 in the morning, it's a loss of time because it could have been restarted at 4 in the morning.
Exactly, yes, and that's what I would like to do. I would like to make it so that you arrive in the morning and you don't need to do any retry because you have all the information that you need to say, I can deal with whatever is there, either because it had been retried 3 times in the night, or you have the investigation jobs, or you have the automatic ticket labeling, whatever, right? That's what I would like to do with you, right?
And on top of this, maybe we could also think about changing the time where aggregate tests are scheduled, because right now it's like 2 in the morning, let's Central European time. I agree that we have employees all across the globe, but in practice, who is doing openQA review is doing that during Central European time, even from someone who is not in Europe.
Yeah.
So
okay. So that's a good point, Michael. Please, so that this is not lost, please let's have a separate discussion about the maintenance aggregate test and the timing. We can talk about it and discuss it, but I think it's a separate thing, right? So okay, coming back to retry. If you guys like, I'm not sure if it's a good idea, but we can do it as an experiment. Select stats to do within certain job templates, machines, medium types, job groups. You can do that. Okay, so try it out. Maybe there are even, I'm sure there are also corner cases where the feature doesn't work yet because it's not yet used that much. So you will find bugs in that feature. So please, we are happy to hear about them and fix them and improve the feature. I don't think it's good that we do retry equal 1 like everywhere right now, but let's start with, like, if you like, certain job groups or certain architectures. Okay. Now, one other specific example which you mentioned is, you said SCC, so the SUSE customer center where we need to get contact to from containers and such. And I know that Michael, you provided some examples today in the morning as well, which I've seen in chat. So simply, there's a problem to reach a certain host, and I don't think doing a blind retry here is a good idea without knowing about this issue. So in this case, I think auto review is more suitable. Like if you find, I'm sure you can find a certain regex. Like if it says SCC something could not find a host or connection timed out, that should be a ticket in progress. Reference that to a bug in Bugzilla assigned to the SCC team and try to clarify with them. I don't know if it's a problem in SCC. I don't know if it's a problem within the SUSE infrastructure, but certainly the stuff shouldn't fail like that. And I don't think script retry is good here, because think about the following. Your main job is doing QA. So if you need to call zipper 5 times in a row because sometimes there's network, think about the users and customers. I mean, all the users and customers, they are also connected over network. So either we have a completely broken network that should be fixed. Please make sure that this is reported. Or we have the same problems as customers. So it's not your point to work around all the problems of the product and not reporting about them. I mean, work around for temporary, yes, but only for known issues. Okay, Alvaro.
Hello. No, I think Ionis already answered what I was asking. Yeah, so thank you.
Yes, it should work on multi-machine job. Yes. Okay, Felix.
The last argument is I do not support that fully, simply because of the sheer amount of test runs that we run on a daily basis. We will also see a lot of failures on things that typically have no practical implications for our customers, and this is okay. This is a pure play of numbers. I mean, just in one squad we are running more than 100 installations of days, and if you have a failure rate of let's say 2%, and this is a failure rate that probably will never hit any customers, and we cannot go below that failure rate without significant more effort in our SCC infrastructure, which we as a company could probably not do there. And if you run 100 or 1,000 test cases, then by this sheer number you will see 2 or 20 failures depending on how much you do there. So yeah,
I couldn't really follow the argument, because you say you have like 100 machines every day, and we have customers who have more machines, and we have more customers than a single one. So it would be, I imagine, thousands and 10,000s of machines that contact SUSE every day. Are you saying that they will not see the same problem because of another reason, like within our network?
No, there are 2 points that I want to make here. The first point is by the sheer number of test runs that we are having on a daily basis, issues that will probably not be an issue for most of the customers will be appearing to us, simply because of the sheer amount of test cases that we are having. And the second argument is that preventing those very rare issues that we still see would mean that we have to put a lot of effort for something that is probably not the case there. And so to put those things together, I just want to say that there are some issues that we see in openQA that we have to deal on a daily basis, but where from an economical standpoint, it is very optimistic to hope for a solution on those issues at any point. So investing time and actually try to solve for a hopeless issue is something that I would say is not really our best, or is not something that is doable for us. SUSE is a known issue, and simply because we run so many tests, we see those issues. And there is little hope that this is going to be solved at any point. So, yeah.
But it's really a necessity issue, or a combination of probably SUSE infrastructure plus our infrastructure of our workers. So it's a combination. It's not we're blaming SUSE here, but I think it's combination of everything, right?
Yeah, that is the next point. We are running a massive amount of test cases at the same time. So there is a huge amount of load. So probably the same would not happen if the tests would be more spread out, or if the customers are not installing 1,000 machines at the same time.
But I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
Yes, but if I am SUSE admin and I install 1,000 machines at the same time, then I expect that some of them are breaking. It's also assuming that the customers are a bit in a sane mindset and have sensible expectations about what we can do.
Well, the SCC issue in containers is a bit more complicated. I think it's maybe for another discussion in our team.
But I think it's a good example to consider all the different options that we have. Could be the retry feature, which we have shown here. Could be retry with script retry in the test code. It could be asking for feature requests for Zipper or for SUSE Connect, because I still think, why not do the retry in there? Okay. So I would be really happy to learn from you about the outcome of that discussion then, and I will try to follow up. For now, I would say we are at the end, and we can talk about, well, upcoming features. Could be the to-do functionality, openQA result archiving, or also the how to investigate issues, which could be a bit related to what we had. With that, for now, thank you, and see you again next time. Goodbye.